Okay, so listen, if anyone had told me a year ago I'd be doing this, I would have laughed in their face, like hard. Sarah Jenkins, New York City CEO, queen of the concrete jungle, logic my religion, returning to this. This patch of forgotten Earth where the Wi-Fi dies a slow, agonizing death and Google Maps basically throws its hands up in despair. My friends, bless their city slicker hearts, thought I'd finally lost it. "You're going back for Mark?" They'd shrieked over overpriced cocktails, their faces a mix of horror and pity. To mend things? Yeah, right, mend things. I mean, that's what I told them, okay? It sounded rational enough. A brief, intense marriage, I'd explained, a sudden, unexpected divorce, we need closure. Blah, blah, blah. The truth? It was way messier than that, and honestly, it had nothing to do with Mark Muller the man, but everything to do with Mark Muller the house. That old wooden shack, my ex-husband's ancestral home, nestled deep in the kind of rural quiet that makes your ears ring. It had been the setting for the most insane, unsettling 6 months of my life. Things happened there, you know? Things I spent every single waking hour since the divorce trying to break down with cold, hard logic. The weird noises, the feeling of eyes on me, stuff just shifting. A misplaced mug, a photo frame turning itself around on the mantelpiece. Ghost stuff, basically. But me? I'm Sarah Jenkins. I don't believe in ghosts. Never have, never will. I had my theories, oh yeah, a whole arsenal of them. Stress, obviously, starting a new business, moving into a totally different world, marrying a man who spoke maybe 10 words a day. My nerves were shot. Hallucinations, fatigue, the house itself, old and creaky, settling, making its own strange sounds with the wind and the wood. Rats? Definitely rats. Or maybe, just maybe, I'd been having some kind of low-key nervous breakdown, you know? My brain, starved of city stimulation, making up its own drama. I'd rationalized it all away, every single weird thing, piled explanation on top of explanation until the tower of logic was so tall it almost hid the gaping hole of sheer terror underneath. Almost. But here's the kicker. The more I tried to forget, the more those memories clawed at me. They weren't fading. They were getting sharper, colder, like splinters under the skin, and it was driving me insane. I needed to go back, not for Mark, not for some sappy let's try again reunion. No, I needed to go back to prove to myself once and for all that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't lost my mind, that those things, they had an explanation, a normal, scientific, utterly boring explanation. And if they didn't, well, then I needed to know what the hell they were. So, I sold my ridiculously expensive downtown apartment, delegated my CEO duties to my very capable and very confused second-in-command, packed a suitcase, and got into my car. Traded the roar of traffic for the endless hum of the highway, then the crunch of gravel, and finally the slosh of mud. Yeah, the road to Mark's place, still a disaster. As the old pickup truck bounced along the deeply rutted dirt track, the familiar dense canopy of trees started to close in. Sunlight, what little there was, struggled to pierce through, dappling the road in uneven patches. The air, already heavy and damp, seemed to press in, thick with the smell of wet earth and ancient pine. It felt different. Not just the smell, but the way it settled on your skin, like a shroud. I told myself it was just the rural air, cleaner, maybe, or just different. But a shiver, cold and sharp, traced its way down my spine. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it, Mark's house, the same old wooden cabin, weathered and dark, nestled against the backdrop of the hills. The chimney stood tall, a crooked finger pointing at a sky that looked too gray, too still. The sight of it sent another jolt through me, a primal kind of dread that made my stomach clench. It was like seeing a monster you thought you'd defeated, only to find it waiting, patient and unmoving, right where you left it. This place, It was where the night stretched out, long and empty, where every creak of the old wood sounded like footsteps, where I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, convinced there was something else in the room with me. Not just me. Definitely not just me. I remembered those fleeting images, vivid as if they happened yesterday. A shadow, fast and too thin, at the very edge of my vision, just as I turned my head. Or the distinct thump, thump, thump from the gabled attic right above our bedroom, usually around 2 a.m., always when Mark was sleeping, deep and undisturbed. Stress, Sarah, I muttered to myself, my voice a little too shaky. You were just overworked, exhausted. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my knuckles white. It's all in your head. It has to be. I pulled up to the house, parking the truck next to Mark's beat-up old Ford. The engine died, and the silence that followed was instant and absolute. Not a single bird chirp, just the distant whisper of the wind through the pines and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The front door, always a little ajar, swung open. Mark stood there. Just stood. Tall, broad-shouldered, same quiet gaze. He hadn't changed much. He looked at me, his eyes dark, unreadable, didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I felt a prickle of something cold, something beyond just nerves under my skin. His silence always unnerved me. It was like he was a deep well, and I couldn't see the bottom. Not a good sign, Sarah, I thought. Not a good sign for proving you're not crazy. Then he simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement of his head, a gesture I knew meant, come in. I got out of the truck, the muddy ground squelching under my boots. The air felt heavy, like it was pushing down on my chest. As I stepped over the threshold, into the dim interior of the house, a sudden gust of wind swept through, making the old floorboards groan. It carried with it that distinct smell. Damp earth, decaying wood, and something else, something stale and forgotten, clinging to the shadows. My stomach lurched. Just an old house smell, I told myself, a little too forcefully. That's all it is. Goddamn old house. But the feeling persisted. It wasn't just a smell. It was a presence, a heaviness that seemed to have settled into every crack and crevice, deeper than I remembered. It was like walking into a room where someone had just died, and the air still held the echo of their last breath. I dropped my bag in the hallway, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Mark had already walked into the living room, heading towards the stone fireplace. He didn't offer to help, didn't ask about my trip, just existed. That was Mark. I started unpacking, mainly to give my hands something to do, anything to distract myself from the prickling unease that was rapidly intensifying. As I folded a shirt and placed it in the empty dresser drawer, my eyes drifted upwards, to the ceiling, to the rough, unpainted planks that formed the floor of the gabled attic directly above. And there it was, that feeling, like a spotlight was shining on me from above, but without any actual light, a subtle, cold pressure, as if someone, or something, was looking down, watching, every move. My breath hitched. I quickly snapped my head away, forcing my gaze to the worn floorboards beneath my feet. "Stop it, Sarah," I whispered, the words barely audible. "You're imagining things. It's just being back here, old memories playing tricks." I tried to sound convincing, even to myself. But the coldness in the pit of my stomach, that didn't go away. The hair on my arms stood on end. I just stared at the floor, trying to make sense of the new, old dread. This was supposed to bring answers, right? Not this. Not a return of the exact same damn nightmare. All right, so, yeah, I was back. In that house. With that man. Sounds like a bad rom-com sequel, right? Except instead of witty banter and awkward glances, it was just silence, and that familiar, heavy air. My grand plan to mend things with Mark meant playing the role of the slightly less uptight city girl trying to rediscover her roots, which, let's be honest, was a performance worthy of an Oscar. The first couple of days were a blur of forced normalcy. I cooked, I cleaned, I even attempted to help Mark fix a leaky faucet, mostly just getting in the way. He didn't say much, as expected, just watched, his dark eyes like two bottomless pits, absorbing everything, giving nothing back. It was infuriating and unsettling. His quietness always felt less like peace and more like a carefully constructed wall. A wall hiding what? I still hadn't figured out. Inside, though, I was a goddamn battlefield. My brain, the hyperlogical, data-driven engine it was working overtime. Every creak of the old wood, every gust of wind rattling the window panes, I instantly cataloged and analyzed. Wind, old house, wood settling, normal. I repeated these mantras like prayers, trying to drown out the growing cacophony of my own unease. I'd done this before, right? I'd rationalized everything away back then. I could do it again. I had to. But the discomfort was a stubborn bitch. It clung to me like a damp, cold blanket, thickening with each passing hour. I tried to push it down, to smile, to make small talk with Mark about, I don't know, the weather, his garden, anything to pretend this was just a normal reunion, two exes trying to figure things out. But every time his gaze drifted my way, I felt a tremor, a cold shiver crawling up my spine, a silent alarm bell ringing in the back of my mind. It wasn't a look of judgment or anger or even affection. It was just observation, like I was a specimen under glass. Then came the second night. I was lying in bed, staring at the dimly lit ceiling, the rough clanks of the attic floor directly above me. Mark was beside me, a deep, even breathing beside me. He always slept like a log. Me, not so much. My brain was still buzzing, rehashing the day, planning for tomorrow, trying to predict every possible scenario. I was always like that, always in control. That's when it happened. A faint sound. Barely there. A soft, almost whispered creak, creak, from above. Just a couple of times. My entire body went rigid, my breath hitched. My heart, which had been doing a steady, irritating drumbeat, suddenly slammed against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. I lifted my head slightly, straining my ears, every nerve ending screaming. No, no way, I thought. It's just the house, old wood, the wind probably. I swallowed hard, trying to slow my breathing. Yeah, that's it, just the wind. I closed my eyes, squeezed them shut, willing myself to believe it. But the image of that attic door, the one I'd never seen open, burned behind my eyelids. The memory of the thump, thump, thump from before, clear as day. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, rigid and wide awake, until the first rays of dawn finally started to paint the sky. My muscles ached. I felt like I hadn't slept a wink. Fuck my life, I muttered internally, dragging myself out of bed. This is not going to be easy. The next morning, I was in the kitchen, making coffee. Mark was already outside, probably tending to his ridiculously neat vegetable patch. I liked the quiet of the morning, usually, but here the quiet felt too big, too empty. I was washing a spoon, mindlessly humming a tune, when I felt it again. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like someone was watching. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. Just the faded wallpaper, the old wooden cabinets, the window looking out onto a perfectly ordinary, peaceful, or so it seemed, garden. See, Sarah, nothing. You're just tense, I told myself, my voice a whisper. I turned back to the sink, my hands still a little shaky. I finished washing the spoon, placed it carefully on the drying rack beside a clean plate, and I swear I placed it securely, right in the middle of its little slot. I turned to grab the coffee pot. 2 seconds. That's all it took. When I turned back, the spoon wasn't in the middle anymore. It had shifted. Just a tiny bit, maybe an inch or two, but it was definitely off-center. My eyes fixated on it, my breath caught in my throat. "Okay," I whispered, my voice sounding strained. "Okay, so maybe I didn't put it down properly. Yeah, that's it. My hands were shaky, or Mark came in and bumped the counter." I tried to force a laugh, but it came out as a pathetic, dry cough. God damn old house, everything's crooked. I reached out, picked up the spoon, and placed it back in its original spot, pushing down extra hard, as if to prove a point to myself, mostly. I couldn't talk to Mark about this, not a chance. He was already so remote. If I started babbling about creaking attics and moving spoons, he'd probably just stare at me with that unreadable gaze, or worse, confirm my deepest fear, that I was losing it. Or maybe he knew something he wasn't saying. The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through me. I was alone in this. Totally and utterly alone, fighting a battle inside my own head, trying to keep the walls of my sanity from crumbling. Days bled into a week. The routine was set. Mark worked on the farm. I mostly hovered around the house, trying to prove to myself that it was just a house, just wood and nails and old memories. But the nights? Oh, the nights. They were becoming a goddamn special kind of hell. One night, it was worse, much worse. The creak started again from the attic, but this time it wasn't just random sounds. It was rhythmic, like heavy, deliberate footsteps. Thump, scrape, slow, measured. My eyes snapped open. Mark was still sleeping soundly beside me, completely undisturbed. Lucky bastard. My whole body went tense, muscles locking up. I lay there, rigid, listening. The sounds continued, now accompanied by a low, dragging noise. Clack, clack, like something being pulled across the floorboards. My heart was a frantic hummingbird in my chest, beating so hard I thought it would burst. No, I thought, the single word a desperate plea in my head. No way. It's just the wind. Or those damn rats. Maybe they're dragging something. A piece of wood. A dead squirrel. Whatever. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation. Any explanation, no matter how ridiculous. Yeah, rats. Big ones. Or maybe I'm just not sleeping. Too tired. Easy to imagine things when you're this wired. I couldn't take it anymore. The sounds were too clear. Too real. I slowly, carefully slid out of bed, trying not to make a sound. My feet barely touched the cold floorboards as I crept towards the attic door in the hallway. It was just a plain wooden door, flush with the wall, no knob, just a simple latch at the very top, almost flush with the ceiling. I'd never seen it open, ever. I reached the door, my hand shaking slightly as I pressed my ear against the cool wood. The sounds were louder here, distinct. Clack, clack, thump, scrape. It was definitely coming from directly behind the door, and it was moving across the attic. My blood ran cold, my scalp prickled, my gut twisted. This isn't rats, I thought, a cold, hard certainty settling in. This isn't wind. This isn't normal. But then, the rational part of my brain, the one that refused to give up, kicked in. Okay, Sarah, deep breaths. You're overtired, you're stressed, you're in an old, creaky house. It's making you jumpy. You're hearing things. I took a shaky breath. Then, with a sudden burst of defiance, I slammed my fist against the wall next to the attic door. Not too hard, but hard enough to make a definitive sharp thud. The sounds stopped, instantly. Complete, profound silence filled the house. My hand was still pressed against the wall, my chest heaving. I stood there, frozen, listening. Nothing, not a peep. See, I whispered to myself, a triumphant, albeit shaky, tremor in my voice. It was just, whatever. Now it stopped. I scared it away. It's nothing. I tiptoed back to bed, my heart still thumping, But a tiny sliver of my logical brain felt a win, a small, temporary win. I crawled back under the covers, but sleep, forget about it. My mind raced. Every shadow seemed to stretch, every tiny house noise amplified. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, convinced if I closed my eyes, the sounds would start again. The next morning, I woke up feeling like a zombie. My eyes were gritty, my head ached. I rolled over to silence my old alarm clock Mark had placed on my bedside table. It was one of those clunky retro ones, sitting on a delicate lace mat. My eyes widened. The clock wasn't on the lace mat anymore. It had moved, about 2 or 3 inches to the left, now sitting directly on the polished wood of the table, off its mat. I stared at it, just stare. My mind, still fuzzy from lack of sleep, struggled to process. Had I knocked it in the night, when I got up to check the attic? No, I was so careful. Every move was slow, deliberate. And Mark? He was a deep sleeper, a rock. He wouldn't have touched it. Maybe I just didn't remember where I put it, I mumbled, my voice dry. Yeah, that's it. Or maybe Mark was up to use the bathroom, and he bumped it. Or it rolled. Yeah, it's a rounded clock. Maybe it rolled. I picked it up, examined it. It didn't have wheels. It wasn't round enough to roll. It was a solid, square little thing.
This is such a headache, I sighed, rubbing my temples. My head was buzzing. All these little things. All these tiny, easily explainable things that were, somehow, still piling up into a mountain of something else. Later that day, when Mark was taking a break from the garden, sipping his usual black coffee on the porch, I decided to try. Just a subtle probe. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, like I was just making conversation. "You know, this old house, it makes some pretty interesting noises at night, huh? The wood creaking, sounds like footsteps sometimes." I forced a small fake laugh. Mark looked up from his coffee mug. His dark eyes met mine. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just watched me. Then he grunted, a low, non-committal sound that could mean anything or nothing. "Yeah," I pressed on, trying to push him a little. "Like from the attic. I thought I heard something dragging last night. You know, like clack clack. What do you think that could be? Wind? Rats?" He took another slow sip of his coffee. His gaze drifted away from me, towards the distant tree line. He just shrugged, a small, almost imperceptible movement of his shoulders. "Probably just the house," he mumbled, his voice flat. "Old place." And that was it. No further explanation, no curiosity, just a dismissal. My stomach clenched. Was he really so used to it? Or was he just ignoring me? Or was he hiding something? His reaction, or lack thereof, just intensified my feeling of isolation. It reinforced the notion that I was either losing my mind, or he simply didn't care about my worries. Or, the worst thought of all, he knew exactly what was going on, and I really, really didn't want to know. God damn it, Mark, I thought, a desperate frustration bubbling up. Just say something, anything. But he didn't. He just sat there, a silent, unmoving statue, in his silent, unmoving house, letting me drown in my own thoughts, my own mounting terror. Days bled into a second week, then a third. Honestly, it was a blur. My once perfect CEO face, the one that used to close multi-million-dollar deals with a smile and a steely gaze, was a disaster. Dark circles under my eyes looked like bruises. My skin was pale, almost translucent. I was a walking, talking zombie, fueled by instant coffee and a terrifying refusal to admit I was losing my damn mind. The rational explanations? Yeah, they stopped working. Completely. The wind became too precise. The old house settling started to sound like someone dragging furniture. And the rats?
Well, rats don't usually shift alarm clocks exactly 2 inches to the left off their decorative mats without knocking them over. My logical brain, usually a fortress of facts and figures, was under siege, crumbling brick by brick. Fear. It wasn't just a whisper in the back of my mind anymore. It was a scream, a full-blown, gut-wrenching, claw-at-my-throat scream that echoed inside me every single minute. Every shadow, every distant sound, every creak from the floorboards above when I was alone in the kitchen, it all sent a jolt of pure terror through me. My heart was in a constant state of panic, a frantic drumbeat that kept me wide awake night after night. I felt trapped, stuck between this desperate need to figure out what the hell was going on, and the absolute horror of realizing the truth might be something I couldn't possibly handle. The anxiety that had been a dull ache was now a sharp, stabbing pain. And the self-doubt? Oh, the self-doubt had morphed into full-blown paranoia. I doubted everything. The house, Mark, my own sanity. The nights, they were the worst. I stopped trying to sleep. Just lay there, rigid, staring at the ceiling, waiting. And it always came. The attic, right above my head. The creak, creak from before escalated. Now it was clear, distinct, like heavy, deliberate footsteps. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape. Slow, measured. Someone, something, was walking, right there, above me. I could almost feel the vibration through the ceiling. Mark, of course, slept like he was tranquilized, that stoic bastard. And the watching? Oh God, the watching! It was everywhere. A prickling sensation on the back of my neck that intensified until I could swear I felt breath on my skin. I couldn't turn my back on anything. Not the hallway, not the open doorway, not even the window. I'd be washing dishes and suddenly the hair on my arms would stand up. I'd spin around, quick as lightning, my heart hammering against my ribs, but there was never anything there, just the empty space, mocking me. But the feeling, it never went away. It was a constant weight, a cold, invisible gaze, clinging to me. I started talking to myself, whispering desperate reassurances, but even my own voice sounded alien, fragile. This couldn't go on. I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed air. I needed to get out, even for a few minutes, anything to escape the suffocating walls of that damn house and the things lurking within it. So, one scorching afternoon, when the sun was high and Mark was out in the back 40, probably wrestling a tractor or something equally rural, I decided to escape. I grabbed my phone, keys, and practically sprinted out the front door. I told myself I needed to check my emails, get some fresh air, maybe see if there was a tiny, barely there coffee shop in this forgotten corner of the world. Pure bullshit, of course. I just needed to run. As I walked down the dusty lane, the familiar crunch of gravel under my sneakers, I saw old George, Mark's neighbor, out by his front yard. He was a sweet, weathered old man, always had a quiet smile and a wave. He was out there, struggling with a broken section of his ancient wooden fence, a hammer clutched in his gnarled hand. An opportunity, a distraction, a chance to talk to a normal human being. "Hey, George," I called out, trying to make my voice sound normal, light, like I wasn't 2 seconds away from having a full-blown panic attack. I forced a smile that felt brittle, like it might shatter any second. He looked up, gave me a friendly nod, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sarah, haven't seen you out and about much. Everything all right?" "Oh yeah, just enjoying the countryside, you know," I lied, walking over, leaning against the good section of his fence. My hands, I noticed, were trembling slightly. I clasped them together behind my back. "Actually, maybe you can help me with something. You've lived here forever, right?" George chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "Long enough to see a few things, I reckon." Well, I started, trying to sound casual, like it was just a funny little quirk, but the words tumbled out, faster than I intended, fueled by exhaustion and a desperate need to confide in someone, anyone. I swear I keep hearing these noises in Mark's attic, like footsteps. Even when I was here a few years ago, I thought I was just imagining things. You know, city girl in an old house, too stressed out. I always just rationalized it away. I forced another laugh, a dry, pathetic sound. I figured I was just going crazy back then, just overtired, dreaming things up. George stopped hammering. He tilted his head a little, looking at the roof of Mark's house in the distance, then back at me. His expression was utterly calm. No surprise, no judgment, just a simple, almost bland look. He didn't even seem to pause to think about it. He just spoke. "Oh, the attic," he said, his voice flat, matter-of-fact. He picked up his hammer again, tapped a loose nail back into the fence post. Thwack, thwack. George hammered another nail, completely absorbed in his work, as if he'd just told me the most boring, mundane piece of local gossip. "Yeah, that was long before you even came along, Sarah. Good for him. Stopped all the ruckus." My world, my entire carefully constructed, rational world, it didn't just crack, it didn't just splinter, it shattered, exploded into a million tiny, razor-sharp pieces, leaving nothing but an echoing void. My breath hitched in my throat. My hands, still clasped behind my back, clenched the old wooden fence until my knuckles were bone white. Every muscle in my body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even think for a solid minute. Silent floorboards, sealed door. Long before I came along. The words hammered into my brain, each one a death knell to my sanity.
If the floorboards up there had been replaced with silent ones, if that attic door had been sealed completely shut long before I ever stepped foot in this goddamn house, then what the hell were those footsteps? What were those dragging sounds? What was thumping and scraping and clacking on planks that supposedly made no sound? And Mark's first wife, his first wife, she'd heard it too, things moving, long before me, which meant Mark knew. He knew, all this time. He just sat there, quiet, unblinking, letting me drown in my own terror, letting me think I was losing my mind, when he knew exactly what was up there, what it was, and he had just shrugged? Probably just the house, old place, the casual dismissal, the unreadable eyes. A cold, chilling dread, unlike anything I'd ever felt, began to spread through my body. It started in my gut, a freezing knot, then snaked up my spine, through my chest, bobby-trapping my lungs until I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred for a second, the sunny afternoon suddenly feeling dark, menacing. My teeth started to chatter, just a little, uncontrollably. Fuck, I thought, the word a desperate, silent plea inside my head. Fuck, fuck, fuck. So what was that thing? And Mark, who the hell is he? The question hung in the air, heavy and poisonous, an answer I suddenly, desperately did not want to know.